SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Australia is going to the polls tomorrow, so for the final episode in our special week of pre-election interviews, we delve into a new report from OnDeck, small business loan experts. OnDeck surveyed 500 small business owners to ascertain just what is influencing their votes. And with 85% citing cost of living pressures as their key issue this election, it appears that the great majority of small business owners are in line with the rest of the electorate. But there's a great deal of resilience out there in spite of the headwinds. OnDeck's Marketing Director, Justin Brady, delves into the survey with Jeff Waters.
We often do research and survey small businesses across Australia, across a range of industry sectors and states. We always try and understand how our customers are feeling. And as you can imagine, a very topical piece of research we've just conducted, leveraging 500 small businesses across Australia and a core range of industries, was really centred around the upcoming federal election. And the reason we did this, we knew it was one, very topical, but we wanted to get a bit of a sense of how our customers were feeling. We speak to hundreds every day, but most importantly, we wanted to take away how we can continue to support them as we go about our business, lending to small businesses. That's all we do. So keeping tabs on how they're feeling and what they're thinking about is critical to our internal discussions.
Now, you found that more than 80% of small business owners in the survey were concerned ahead of the election by the cost of living. Why does the cost of living directly impact upon small businesses like that?
Look, the cost of living, there's a number of components that keep small businesses up at night, and this isn't a surprise probably to yourself or even to me after getting the results of this survey. But rising supply costs, higher wages, steeper household bills, as you can imagine, these aren't just isolated to businesses. They are also feeling these in their own personal spending habits and costs rising across the board. So I wasn't surprised. It actually came in at 84%. So incredibly important and an absolute concern for small businesses, those rising costs.
Presumably they'll be factoring that into their vote on Saturday.
Completely. And more specifically, one of the highest ones was actually energy prices. Very topical at the moment, but about half, 54% to be exact, flagged that as a key voting decider for this upcoming election as well.
What sort of things cause that concern insofar as energy prices are concerned? I know we've seen them go up, but why does it impact small business directly?
Look, it's a major cost and it's a big impact to their bottom line. As you can imagine, a small business owner that's experiencing these rising energy prices specific to electricity can't always pass that incremental cost on to their customers. What you'd often find is that they could pass a little bit on, but you increase your prices too much. And what that does is actually reduce foot traffic. And we know from other research out in the market that retail shops, on average, their energy prices or electricity bills are between $5,000 to $10,000 a year. And that can go all the way up to $20,000 a year for manufacturing businesses.
Wow.
So, as you can imagine, that's a very large cost. And they've been rising basically since COVID finished a couple of years ago. So one that we're keeping an eye on, but we know small businesses are doing it tough at the minute.
Obviously, this is affecting all of the electorate, not just small businesses, but a disproportionate effect perhaps. Now, people appear to be even more worried or concerned or upset about rising business costs. Which costs are you describing there?
So the main ones I was talking about there is the electricity costs. So we know the government have been doing a little bit on the, the consumer side with those $150 rebates that have already started to come in. I think it's $75 on a quarterly basis. So they're helpful, but it's just not enough. And that's what we're hearing through this research, that small businesses are really focused on this as a key concern coming into the weekend.
Has the sector had any luck in trying to convince the government of this?
It doesn't appear that it's getting the traction based on the research and the feedback we're seeing. And obviously, I think everyone just wants a greater focus on finding ways, and sustainable ways, I'd say, to bring these costs down. There's only small short-term measures in place, but I think there's a real focus, and that's what we're hearing, of a need for longer-term, more sustainable measures in place, regardless of which government.
Sure. It's also really interesting that more than half of the respondents to the survey named healthcare and housing affordability as voting concerns. Now, these are personal cost pressures. How does that intersect with business decisions for small business owners?
Again, I think we touched on it a little bit before, but as you can appreciate, small business owners, personal life, it's all very intertwined. So if their kids can't afford housing or healthcare costs spike, it affects their ability to focus, hire and invest. So business owners, you can't separate the two entirely. They're often intertwined.
And clearly this would be all having an impact on this incredibly large number of insolvencies that we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think insolvencies and even voluntary insolvencies, last year we saw a very large spike in voluntary insolvencies. So businesses constantly facing challenges, and in Australia they're incredibly agile and adaptable to these sorts of pressures that appear. But tax payments last year and growing tax pressures have been another one we've been hearing about for at least 18 to 24 months.
There's also been a large increase in red tape over the past 3 years. So are you saying that lots of small business owners are throwing their hands in the air and saying this is just all too much?
You definitely see some, but I'm a very positive person, and speaking to businesses, the thing that is inspiring is how resilient small business owners are. Things can be incredibly challenging, but the ones that are able to adapt can often find ways out of this. Like, we do a lot of lending to small businesses, and as I said, have a lot of discussions with small businesses, and to see a lot coming to us for funding to grow their businesses, like I said, it's inspiring, and for us to be able to support them through some challenging times, but also some opportunistic times, is really rewarding.
Very interesting. And how have you seen your business evolve during this period as a lender?
Yeah, look, I think we've always stuck to our kind of core proposition, focusing on small business. And often at times you'll see different industries and different sectors needing you more. But for the most part, I think we've stayed really agile in this time and really try to understand those challenges of our customers and lend appropriately based on that. So we continue to grow. We continue to see that growth in demand coming from a range of those core industries I mentioned. So retail, manufacturers, cafe, restaurants, tradies. Tradies are a big part of who we work with and who we support. And being able to provide quick access to funding really helps them just focus on what they're good at, which is their small business, where their passion lies.
Getting back to the survey, there's a large concern over immigration levels. Now, I assume some small businesses would prefer higher immigration levels and some not so much. Can you please expand on that?
Yeah, so the survey did say that 31% of business owners are factoring immigration policy into their vote. So a third, and you're 100% right, different sectors need this for different reasons. So as you can appreciate, hospitality, healthcare, construction, retail, those sorts of industries really rely on these critical skills. As you can imagine, they need a greater workforce, and it is very hard to hire talent, retain talent. We've kind of seen that over the last couple of years. So employing people is critical, and filling those skill gaps that do arise when immigration is low is obviously on 1/3 of small businesses' minds coming into this election.
And just to wrap up, how would you describe the overall feeling that you're getting from the sector?
Definitely mixed. I think, still a lot of optimism out there. We can see that with the businesses we're speaking to on a regular basis, but they are doing it tough, and they have some common thoughts and feelings heading into this election of where they want support and where they want sustainable support. So I'm very optimistic. As I said, small businesses are very resilient, but they are doing it tough and want some sustainable support long term.
That was Justin Brady, Marketing Director at OnDeck. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week.
SoundCartel.